Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm sharing a mid-year update. So this is how I've been doing on challenges and readathons that I am participating in or I have created for myself for this whole year. Now I am participating in other monthly readathons. I'm participating in several things right now for July and for the summer, but these are challenges that I started in January and they go throughout the whole year. So that is a little more time consuming and a little more challenging. But I do love a good challenge because it helps me get these books read off my shelf. It also helps me connect with other readers, so I like that too. And sometimes I find new authors that way, so I like that as well. So I am going to give you an update on some of the goals that I've set for myself and how I'm doing reaching those different goals. But before I do that, I do want to mention that we lost a booktuber this past week, and I haven't mentioned it. I've posted a couple of times since then, but I'm struggling with the loss of Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. She was one of my buddy readers, and we read books together all the time. We were making our way through Ray Bradbury. Both of us loved Ray Bradbury and we were making our way through that. And so I'm struggling because a lot of the things I'm going to talk about on this mid-year update, she was part of a lot of my challenges. So it's just difficult just even talking about it. Art over at A Bookshelf Odyssey, Alice and myself, we had a special Ray Bradbury group, and we had read several. We've read a lot of Ray Bradbury together, and so I discussed it with Art the other day, and we have decided to continue because I just wasn't sure if I could even continue. But of course I want to read the Ray Bradbury books, and I know that Alice would want us to continue, but it's just hard. And so we are going to continue and we're going to celebrate Alice through our Ray Bradbury reads. But it's just hard. It's difficult because I talked to her. We had set up at the beginning of the year, we were going to read an Anthony Trollope together at Victober for October for Victober. And we were going to read, actually starting this month, we were going to read a Ray Bradbury so that we could read Farewell Summer in August. So we had back-to-back buddy reads for July and August, and then I also had one with her in October. And we started the year off reading Adapted to Maurier together. Now, both of us stopped reading that one because we were struggling with other things, and I ended up going back to it. I don't think Alice ever went back to it, but I ended up going back and finishing that book. And it's just difficult because she was such a wonderful person. She was one of the first booktubers to come over and comment and subscribe to my channel when I started it. I think she had started her booktube channel several months before I did, so she was new to it as well. And we have just been on this journey together. And, you know, I consider Alice a friend, even though she lived, across the pond. I still consider her a great friend, and she was a favorite booktuber as well as a favorite buddy reader because she really brought a lot to the table when we would discuss our books that we were buddy reading. So she's going to be greatly missed, and I will leave a link to her channel below. Please go over and watch some of those. One of the, I'm going to talk about Ray Bradbury and I'm going to talk about Agatha Christie as I do this update. And it's just difficult because she is the reason I fell in love with Agatha Christie. And she would help me out on what to read. And I was going to her, letting her know what I was reading for Agatha Christie. She just recently, this year, she had posted this 5 authors. She wanted to read all of their work. And I loved it because 3 of the authors on her list are the 5 authors that are on my list of all the work, Ray Bradbury being one of them. And then the other that's on my list that wasn't on her list is Agatha Christie. And it's not on her list because she had already read Agatha Christie. So we had so many similarities in the books that we were interested in. And again, she's just going to be greatly missed. So go over and when you get a chance, go over and watch a couple of her videos, and let's celebrate Alice together. But these are just some updates on some of the challenges and readathons and things that I have been participating in. Again, these are for the entire year. So the first one I want to talk about is Serious About Series. This is hosted by Elizabeth over at Lizzie Faye Loves Books, and she does this every year. And it's to get those series read that we have started that are on our shelves. I think this year they had some kind of seasonal theme. I can't even remember what the theme was, and I started off thinking I'd do that, but instead, for Serious About Series for myself, I'm just going to read as many series off of my shelf that I can get to. So for Serious About Series and the series that I have started, one of my goals was to read the Nancy Drew, and I wanted to read 1 through 10 because there are a gazillion Nancy Drew books, but I wanted to read 1 through 10, and so I started a group read of those, and we have read up to 9, and this month I am happy to say that we will be finishing that project and we will read number 10, and so I'm excited that I can check that off of my list. I also finished a series called the Daring series by D.E. Stevenson. That is a trilogy, and I finished that. I read 2 of the Wings of Glory trilogy by Sarah Sundin. That is a Christian historical fiction. Really enjoying it. Again, it's a trilogy, so I have 1 more. I'm looking at my clipboard here, so if you're wondering why I'm looking down. I read the 2nd of the Tales of the Willows quartet. That is a spin-off of Wind in the Willows. Wind in the Willows is a favorite of mine, so I am enjoying that because it really does feel like a good spin-off for Wind in the Willows. So I've read the 2nd in that quartet. I read the 2nd in the Emmy Lake Chronicles, and I've read 2. That is a trilogy, so I have 1 more in that series. I read the 2nd in the London Family series by Molly Hughes. That is a nonfiction. It's a memoir, and it goes through each decade, and I'm really enjoying that. It is a quartet. I only have the first 3 because they were published in a little box set, and I want to find the 4th one, but I did read the 2nd, and I want to continue that as well. I started the Patchwork Mysteries. So those are things I've read and am continuing. These are some things I started. I started the Patchwork series. It's called the Patchwork Mysteries, and they are all written by different authors. So there's a lot of them. There are 27 of these, and I've read the first one. But I did enjoy it, so I do plan on reading, continuing that series. And I think I have 3 or 4 of those on my shelf. The Miss Julia series, that was a great one that I started this year. That was one that Elizabeth had recommended to me when she came to visit. So I really enjoyed that. There are 23 in the Miss Julia series. Have a long way to go, but I do have a few of those on my shelf, so I do want to read more of Miss Julia. The Waves of Mercy duology. That is a duology by Lynn Austin, and I have both of those books on my shelf, and I read the first one called Waves of Mercy. I think the first one's called Waves of Mercy. The second one's called Legacy of Mercy. I haven't read that one, but I have started that duology, and I love Lynn Austin. She's a favorite Christian author. And then the main thing that I wanted to read for Serious About Series was the Elm Creek Quilt series by Jennifer Shiverini. And I am sad to report that I have not done a good job on this. I wanted to read 3 a quarter, 3 of those a quarter, and I've read 1 book. There are a lot of those books. There are 21 in that series, and so far I've read 3. So I have a long way to go, and I have not done well with that. And I really enjoy it. It's just, I have so many books. So I do need to make that a priority and get back to it because I do love that. And I think I'm thinking that I only have 1 missing, but I may have all of those. I keep saying I have 1 missing, but I may have picked up the last one. So I do need to get to that because it fills up a whole shelf on a bookshelf in my library, and I do need to get to those. Now, I also made a little challenge for myself about Shakespeare. I want to read more Shakespeare. I do love William Shakespeare. I do love reading his plays, but I am not well versed in Shakespeare, and I know that he has influenced so much of what we read in English literature, and so I do want to read all of his plays. And so I had said on here, I had posted a video at the beginning of the year saying that I would read at least 4 plays, and I wanted to read some nonfiction about Shakespeare. So after that video, I did choose a couple of nonfiction. One of them's called Brush Up Shakespeare, I think that's what it's called, Brush Up Your Shakespeare. And I have that on my nightstand, and I am continuing to read that. It's not one you just pick up and read, from the front to back in one sitting or anything. It's one of those you just read as you read these plays. And I am continuing that, and I really love it. It is a great book if you enjoy Shakespeare. And then I also had picked up Shakespeare by Bill Bryson, and I am planning on reading that. I haven't read it yet, but if I do not get to it by November, it will be one of my books for nonfiction November, because that will be a priority. But I do plan on reading it soon because it's not that long. And out of the 4 plays, I've only read 1 play, but they're not that long. And I actually have one, The Taming of the Shrew is actually on my nightstand right now to read. But I did read Merchant of Venice, and it was great. I loved that play. So I do plan on continuing that. Plays don't take me as long, but it is Shakespeare. So, there's that to contend with. But I do plan on completing that one if I have to stop and just read some plays. And I know they do a Shakespeare, some kind of September Shakespeare. If they do that this year, that will help me get some of these read as well. And then I have some challenges for my authors that as I mentioned earlier, I do have authors that I want to read all their work. So that's always going in the background. One of those is always Charles Dickens. My goal is always to read 2 Charles Dickens a year until I get them finished. And this year, I am not finished. I had started reading with Miriam Bleak House in January, and I hardly started it. We were to start reading it. I think I read a few chapters and put it down and just didn't pick it back up. It wasn't that I wasn't enjoying it. It was just, Bleak House is long. It is a long book. And I have it right here because I'm still reading Bleak House. This has taken me longer than any book that I've ever read. And it's not that I'm not enjoying it, but I had to start over because I started it in January with Miriam. She went on to finish it. And I'm sorry, Miriam, that I didn't. But I started it then, and I had so many other things that I was trying to read. So I put it down because I just wasn't focusing on this book. And if you know anything about Charles Dickens, he has so many characters. You have to pay attention. You have to really focus on, scene by scene, because he's going to introduce so many characters and he's going to pull them all together as he gradually gets to the end. So you really have to pay attention when you're reading all these little details and all about these characters. So I put it down for a couple of months. I picked it back up and started reading it, but I've been slow going. And so I've been working on this book for quite some time, and I am enjoying it, but it is taking me forever because I don't just pick this up and read through it. I am slow about it. So I am in this edition, I am on page 655, and there are 846 pages in this edition. So I do plan on finishing this summer, and I have the big book summer that I'm participating in, and so this really could count because by the time I'm finished for the summer, I will be read 400 pages of this because I had read about 500 pages before the start of the summer, and now I am gradually, going through it. But I am enjoying it. It's not that I'm not enjoying it. It's just been the slowest read for me. Because this one, for some reason, he always has a lot of characters, but for some reason, this one has taken me, I just have had to slow down for this one tremendously. But anyway, I have only read that one, and I'm not finished with it yet. But I will read another Charles Dickens before the end of the year. I'm just not sure which one I'm going to choose. For Daphne du Maurier, she's another one. I have read 2 this year. I read Flight of the Falcon, and then I also read The Glass Blowers. So I read 2 for Daphne du Maurier, which I'm pleased about, because if I can read 2 a year, that's great. Agatha Christie, I've done really well with Agatha Christie. I try to read at least 1 Agatha Christie a month, and I have read 5 Agatha Christies this year. So always love Agatha Christie. She's one I enjoy. I actually have to stop and say, okay, I'm not going to read Agatha Christie right now. I'm going to read something else. But I just love Agatha Christie. So I've read 5. And then for D.E. Stevenson, I read 3. So I think that's great for D.E. Stevenson. For Ray Bradbury, I have only read 1. I read that one. I didn't read that one with Alice and Art. I read that one on my own because it was just on a whim. I wanted to read some short stories. It was a short story collection. Loved it. It was The Golden Apples of the Sun and Other Stories. I think this is the title of that one. I really enjoyed it. And then I was supposed to read Dandelion Wine this month, but I think Art and I will probably start that in August. So I will read at least 1 more Ray Bradbury this year. So those are the authors that I'm working on, and I think I've done a good job because I've read at least one of all of those authors, one of their works this year. Now I also started, Kate Howe started a new, it's called the Seasonal Bookshelf Challenge. And she started that this year, and she has a prompt for every month of the year. And so I have been working through that one. So for January, the prompt was a book set in winter. And I read The Willows in Winter by William Horwood. I think it's his name. I mentioned that series earlier. February was to read a book with love. And I read a book by Melody Carlson. She has this Valentine series. So it was one of those, and it was called Once Upon a Winter's Heart. For March, it was a middle grade or an Irish book, and I read a middle grade because it was middle grade March. And I read The Eyes and the Impossible by Dave Eggers. I highly recommend that book. It was a great one. I think it won the Newbery this past year. For April, it's Springtime Setting or Nature Focus, and I read Call It Courage. That was a Newbery winner. So that helps me with my Newbery challenge, because I do want to read all the Newbery Award winners. For May, it was Animals, and I read Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, and that's also a Newbery. And then for June, I read a historical, which was A Memory Between Us by Sarah Sundin. So I've done very well keeping up with that one. I also am participating in another Christian fiction readathon over at JaneReads. Hang on, let me grab that paper. Okay, I thought I had it on my clipboard. So JaneReads has a challenge for this year. It's called the Christian Fiction Challenge, and each month she has a different prompt. I have done okay on this one, but I will say I am very excited to be a part of this one because I have several Christian fiction books on my shelf that I have not read, and I really want to get these read. So I'm trying to read the ones from my shelf. You know, I want to get these read. So whenever she gives a prompt, I look over and try to find one that fits that prompt. So for January, the prompt was start a series, and I read A Distant Melody by Sarah Sundin, and I am so glad I started that because I love Sarah Sundin now. So I was glad to start that series. For February, it was a past favorite, and I loved participating with that one as well because I pulled one of my old ones that I love, that I've read several times. It is it's called The Winter Bride. It's a bind-up of Winter Bride novellas. So they're all Christian romance novellas set in the wintertime, and they are great. And I've read this before, and I had read it several years ago again, and so I thought I'm going to reread that this winter, and I enjoyed that. So Winter Brides was a favorite. For March, it was set in a place you want to visit, and somehow I missed that challenge. I don't know. But I will go back and fulfill it because I'm a person that has to complete the whole challenge. So I will go back and find one for that. April was a new to you author, and I read Land of Silence by Tessa Afshar, and she is a great author. I highly recommend her books if they're anything like Land of Silence, because I enjoyed that one. May was a one-word title, and if you follow my channel and you were following along, you know that I struggled with this one. I had chosen a couple of books. I ended up not reading those. Instead, I went to one of her alternate prompts, and I instead did the favorite author prompt, and I read Waves of Mercy by Lynn Austin because she is a favorite Christian author. And then for June, your second most read genre, and that for me is historical fiction. And so I read the same book for Kate because she had historical fiction as her prompt as this one, and that was A Memory Between Us by Sarah Sundin. So I was able to fulfill the prompt on JaneReads prompt and Kate Howe's prompt for June with one book. So that was great. So I am behind one book on JaneReads Christian Fiction Challenge, but I am right on schedule with Kate. So I will have to go back and find one and double up on the Christian Fiction Reading Challenge. But I feel good about it because I have read, 5 books off of my shelf, and if I can get a book read off of my shelf, I'm doing something. So I'm excited that I was able to get those read, and I enjoyed every single one of those books. Now, there were a couple of others that I was planning on participating in, and I never really started, so I'm just going to go with what I already have. My main thing is to get these books read off of my shelf, and I love trying to read all of the my favorite authors and trying to read all their works. That's what I love the most. So several of these authors that I am trying to read through, I have collected over the years a lot of their books, and so they're sitting here waiting, and I'm excited for that. And I feel pleased. I feel pleased with what I've read so far. Let me know in the comments if you have any challenges that you are participating in throughout this year, if you have read any of the books that I have mentioned, or if you're interested in any of these books. Let me know that too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.